Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SEMA Businesswomen's Network Ally Series. Actually, we are rebranding it, where it's just going to be about being allies, and growing the conversation is what this webinar is going to be all about. It's about growing awareness, growing the conversation, and continuing the great progress that we've accomplished over the years and how to make sure that that momentum keeps going. So thank you all for joining us. I see more and more people are filtering in. So I myself, I'm Rachel Speir. I'm owner founder of RS Marketing. I'm a council member for SBN, and thrilled to be the one to moderate my wonderful panelists. Unfortunately, Chris Gauss cannot make it today. He had a meeting last minute scheduled, so I still have these two wonderful panelists here. So Sara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Sara Morosan. I own a company called LGE-CTS Motorsports. We sell aftermarket parts, retail store, and we do a lot of builds. And we're located in Southern California. And then I am also the chair of SBN and SEMA Cares.
Thank you. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Steve Gilmore. I'm from Ford Motor Company. I am the chief designer of our vehicle personalization area. So my team works on everything from appearance packages for vehicles to accessories, Ford performance parts. Worked on a lot of SEMA vehicles in the past, including some with Sara.
Yep.
Own booth at SEMA last year. It was the Ford Performance Parts and Accessories booth, so that was a lot of fun. And I'm also on the SEMA Pro Council.
Awesome. So I just want to remind everyone that there's always the Q&A if you have a question, and there's also the chat that we will be monitoring. So if we are going too fast or you want us to talk a little bit more about certain topics, please put in your thoughts and chats, so that way we can get to your answer or get to answer your questions. So right now, let's see, with the participants, why don't we, Gary, can we put up the first poll? So we also want to know a little bit more about you, the audience, so that way we can speak to what you want and are looking for. So if you could, Gary, put up the demographic so we understand a little bit more about our audience. Now, awesome. Wonderful. Thank you all for filling that out. I have one more quick question that I'd love to get up for the poll, which is, have you watched at least one of the previous 3 webinar series for this? So if you could just take a few seconds to answer that, that'd be great. Awesome. Awesome. All right, cool. Thank you all very much for answering those questions. So just a quick brief on what we talked about last year during our 3 webinar series was really just identifying what an ally is and what that mentality looks like. So it's about supporting gender equity. Yeah, we all face biases in the workplace. So it's about recognizing our own, maybe helping somebody else recognize their biases, and making sure that we all understand that our actions affect others. We inspire others to act. We inspire others to really look at the way that they talk, they act, they think, because that does have an effect on professionals in the work environment. And then empowering, really making sure that we're empowering other people to feel that they are worthy and capable of going after what their interests are, the opportunities that they want to, that they think that they want to be a part of. So really empowering those to go for it. Next slide. So the ally mindset is really shifting the perspective of what it means to be an ally. Instead of who can be an ally, it should be we all should be allies to each other in a professional work environment. Now, as women with SBN, our main focus is to, understand that there is some generational bias, I guess you could say, but really we're all about empowering and making sure that anybody can go after the right opportunity and get the position or the job or the project if they've earned it and they're capable of it. So being an ally is helping somebody understand that they can do that. Deciding to take action. There's a big difference between saying you're an ally and actually doing it. So how do we encourage ourselves and others to act? And then making it second nature. This isn't something that should be forced. It isn't something that should be told that's what you need to do. We need to make it so it becomes second nature. Start small. It doesn't have to be a big, sweeping, huge change. A lot of people resist that. So let's start by taking small steps, but making it second nature. So that way it becomes something that we don't even think about long run. Next slide, please. So, and now getting into is we have people that are obviously, and I'm sure all of you that are watching this right now, you understand the ally mindset. And we really want to keep, as I said, this momentum growing. We're doing great things. So I would love for you, Sara, to really kind of tell us a little bit about like what it takes to raise awareness for the importance of allyship.
Yeah. So kind of like how you were saying about like the second nature thing, kind of going on to that too. When I had to really start thinking about like my allies and who the people were, when I was growing up and in the shop, the people that were allies, it wasn't even like they didn't come up to me and be like, I'm going to be your ally. They just helped guide me continually, you know, and then it wasn't until like later in the years, I was like, man, I wouldn't have been able to get to the places I am now without those people in my life helping to guide, for me to go to for support, and just really helping and pushing me. And so I think that is, like you said, really important because, you know, you're not going into someone's life forcing it, right? You're just going in and being, you know, true, a friend and someone that's just like wants to help other people because you believe in them. And that's honestly like the biggest part. And that helped a lot with me. For me, I had a couple of males in my life. My dad and my mom, first of all, I worked with them and I didn't even know like that I was a woman in a dominated male industry because my mom worked and she did everything and she worked alongside my dad, and we were never told that we were doing something that women were doing. We were just, if we wanted to get it done and we wanted something, we had to do it ourselves. So we never grew up with that mindset. And I think that kind of helped a lot, where we weren't like, we never walked into a situation going, oh my gosh, I'm a girl walking into this situation. So I think that whole thing too is just bringing the awareness that like we're just humans. We're just people walking into the same situations as everybody else. And, you know, a lot of those situations are just as hard for males to walk in, just as it is for us to walk in. And I think that like, me not having that in my youth was a huge thing. So, I'm sorry, I keep talking about I want to give one example. I went to Alpine, invited out the top 200 retailers to Texas for a week-long conference. There was 199 men and 1 woman. So let me just say that was a little intimidating. But I definitely walked out there with a huge perspective of, I wasn't afraid to raise my hand. I asked questions. It was intimidating at first, but I made some really great friendships through that, where those men became friends and allies as well throughout the years. And the one thing I took away from that was that no one at that conference forgot who I was, because it was always, you were the girl at the Alpine. So I was like, it was an advantage because everyone remembered me from it. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and Steve, I mean, working at Ford, I'm sure you can really speak to the importance and the value of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and it's funny because I have to think back to when I started at Ford too. And, you know, did I really reach out and was I thinking I need to be an ally to somebody? No, people were actually becoming allies for me. And you know, that it's interesting. You have your own goals, you have your own things happening. You're trying to establish yourself so much that sometimes you're not paying attention to what everybody else is. And it takes maybe a little bit after you've gotten established to start realizing, hey, look at what somebody else did for me. I need to be doing that for other people as well. So, and, you know, it is it has been traditionally a male-dominated industry. I see that changing too. I mean, it's been changing, and you know, Sarah's talking about just that. It has been changing for a long time, and you know, I think things are getting better, getting easier, getting more parity. It's a long road. Of course, it's going to take time, but I keep feeling like I'm seeing better and better things happening all the time with equality through the industry.
Yeah, I know from personal experience, working with different manufacturers and racing series, it's been interesting to see when they bring in, you know, new people with new perspectives, just how much it helps them grow. It helps them see new opportunities that maybe other people hadn't. So I think continuing to raise awareness for bringing back not bringing back, raising awareness for allyship and getting back to the inclusion of having the different perspectives, having the different demographics. What we know is different than what somebody else who's, you know, only 20 years old, you know, what they know. So I think that's something allyship really brings together. So why don't we go to the next slide? So this is something that I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, Steve. Kind of and you touched upon it in the last on the last slide. How do you recognize maybe when it's time to engage?
Recognizing it isn't the most easy thing all the time. You know, your own group that you work in, and you know, I do work at a big company, and we all have our own small groups. It's not hard to work with that group, but it's when you start seeing things happening outside of that you know, somebody isn't getting a voice, or you know, somebody has a really good idea. It's not being heard, and trying to encourage that part. That's you know, kind of big, and you don't have to make it a big push. You don't have to get mean with anybody and say, hey, this person has a great idea, you really need to listen. No, you can really just call on the person in a meeting. You can, you know, say, hey, why don't you talk to some of the other people around too? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your goals. Maybe see what other people have to say as well. It's you know, it takes a little bit to break out of your own mold and out of your shell, you know, especially for some of us who were introverts. I don't know that I will call myself that anymore, but you know, I was, but a lot of people, you know, coming into a new environment, they're worried to put up their hand, they're worried to speak up, and I think that's the biggest part of breaking through that and just helping people break through that part of it. And just saying, hey, you're a part of our team. And as soon as you start realizing you all are working hopefully toward a common goal, then that's one of the best parts of it. You know, I will say, and I just saw that Natalie, who's one of my coworkers, you know, she and I talk about this at length at different points too. There are people that have great ideas. They don't get their voices heard. So sometimes you're trying to help them get a voice and then calling it out and say, hey, this person had a great idea. You want to pull them in. And that's you know, a few ways that I do it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, Sarah, why don't you talk about, like, because I know you and we've seen it, we've experienced it in many different situations. So, you know, what is your thoughts on recognizing when to engage and how, maybe?
You know, for me, a lot of times, kind of like how he was saying, like the introvert part, well, sometimes things do get a little overwhelming. And in the very beginning, I was young, so I was a little bit more shy or introvert on some things I would do. And I recognized the fact that, like, the other males in my life would start speaking up and saying things like, we were at a Ford dinner one time, and all the guys were all talking about how they did all the builds, and they were talking about their builds. And I go, wow, no one ever asked us. And I was kind of, at first I was a little like, didn't know what to say. And then Casey and Ron, they spoke up for me, and they were like, oh, you know, these two girls build these cars and they did this. And it was like other people just being able to speak up, because I never had the guts to just go like, oh, this is what I do, and started. So other people just actually like helping to engage or bring out information. And then it started, and then I would start talking, because I would always sit there and be really quiet at first. You all know I'm not quiet now, but but I was in the very beginning. And I think that helped a lot with how to understand to say something, because I wasn't saying it for myself. And I noticed that other people started like bringing me into the conversation and helping me be a part of it. Kind of like what Steve was saying, because like I would know that I had a good idea or that I was doing something, and someone else saying, hey, and bringing it. So that's the same thing hopefully I try to do now too, is walk up and introduce somebody and say, oh, this is who this person is. Or, you know, try to, if I know something about another person, bring that up. Hey, didn't you do X, Y, and Z? So it just helps make that person feel like they can start engaging, because we're making them part of the conversation.
I know for myself, it's been very basic for me, but it seems to be probably the most important way to at least start is just having conversations with your sphere of influence. The people that you work with, the people that you see on the trails, if you're off-roading or at the racetrack, just kind of, if you hear something or they say something to you, you know, just say, hey, you know, maybe there's a better way of approaching this. But I mean, having your sphere of influence can then empower them to then influence their sphere of influence, rather than relying on some program to change things. We have the power to change things. So, I mean, Steve, could you give us an example, maybe? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you're talking about with you and Natalie. Love to hear a little bit more about, like, your sphere of influence at Ford and some examples.
So there's another person on my team that you know, this is a story that I like sharing with a lot of people. She had worked on different programs in the past, and really had people above her that wanted her to, you know, be quiet, don't talk, you know, we're the ones presenting, you're just doing the work. And, you know, okay, there is a bit of, you have to learn, but it lasted a bit too long on that type of thing. When she came over and started working on my team, I threw her into something that was way out of her comfort zone. And not because I wanted her to fail, it's because I knew she was going to succeed. She had a very different way of looking at the projects. She would get in, do the research, the background, and I, you know, it could have been something that was difficult, but as soon as all the guys on the team saw how she approached it and what she did, all of a sudden walls just came down and she was a part of the team and they love her for it. So I watched that, and that's one of the proud moments when I get to see something like that happen, that influence actually helped. So, and you know, it's not every time that you get to see it just that well, but when it does, it feels so good.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this in one of the previous webinars, but yeah, being on the trail, I was spotting a vehicle and a gentleman who knew the trail really well. You know, he's like, "Oh, I got it, don't worry." And I'm like, the driver actually really wants me to spot him since I know the way he drives. And it's like, oh, he's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I actually had to have the driver tell the gentleman, hey, I really want her to spot me. And by the end of the trail, the guy who wanted to take over for me spotting was just like, you know what you're doing. Like you nailed it out there. And you could just see a fundamental shift that anyone, you know, yeah, maybe it wasn't because I was just a female. It was something that I wasn't aware of the trail, but it gave him a new perspective of maybe it's not about just about the trail itself. Maybe it's about the personal relationship. So just introducing those new ideas to people is very, it's empowering not only for yourself, but for the other people around you, because then they'll start approaching things in a different manner too.
Yeah,
We do have
actually,
quick, oh, sorry, Sarah. Yeah, go.
oh, sorry. I was just gonna say earlier, you had mentioned about like our like how we word things. And I actually had a very similar situation where I went in to help somebody with this something that it was also spotting, right? And they did not want to listen to me. And I was just kind of like, okay. And then a guy walked up and told him, and it was the exact same thing I was saying. But afterwards, one of the girls that was on the trail with us, she approached it and she was like, the way she approached it was like, hi, this is, you know, I'm so-and-so, this is my profession, this I do you mind if I help you? And it like, and the way she approached it was so much different. And I was like, man, I got to get way better at how I approach things, you know, because that's like what you're saying is that's a lot of it too, right? Like we also have to be aware on how we approach some things and trying to be respectful on both sides of it too. So I think it's not just on like the male side, it's on our side too, on how we also come in and have the conversation.
I think you nailed that. And yeah, Sarah, I think that reflection of your own being your own ally, or how other allies are approaching the situation, is awesome. Thinking about how they influenced you is a great start for how you can start that conversation maybe with somebody else. So I think that's a great point, Sarah. We did actually have a question from Kim about how is remote work affecting the ability to increase allyship? Would you, so Sarah, why don't you take this one?
So for me, working remote actually has helped me in different ways, because now I'm not like so tied to the shop that I'm able to actually go out more and do some more off-roading, or I have more time to actually interact with people, or take the time off to actually go do things. So for me, remote working has been a bigger blessing, because I've been able to actually have more time to make my relationships stronger, because I was always like on the go, and so surrounded by what was my team. I'm a little more separated from like certain parts on my team now, but I think in the greater scheme of the industry, I've made stronger relationships.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to have the opposite end of this. It's been really difficult. You know, when I have to look at it, the staff I hired during the pandemic when I couldn't even be around them. So this was a really difficult thing, trying to get people introduced to a larger team. It's not simple. And how do you manage that and try to get people comfortable and try to understand each other? Wow, it's not easy. Absolutely not easy. I'm glad that there are some times that we were able to start getting together, you know, in person. And as soon as those in-person interactions started happening, it got easier when it's not just a meeting, when you're not just a number in a meeting, when you're not, you know, that name down there, and don't know who this person is and why are you giving an opinion? I don't know who you are. It's kind of difficult. And you know, and how do you expect to understand what somebody else is going through when you don't know them? And that's really been a difficult thing. You know, we're getting back more to work and in the office more. We're still hybrid work schedule, so you know, it's still not the easiest thing, but I think it's getting better.
Awesome. So I think this is a great opportunity to put up the next poll question, which is what do you feel is the biggest roadblock for someone to become an ally? So we have 3 options, and then if you choose other, I ask you to actually put what your thoughts are in the chat so we can discuss that. So we'll give it a little bit more time here so people can put in their thoughts.
Make it sound like background music. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, for me, because and kind of speaking to the whole virtual versus in person, I'm going to agree with both of you because yes, it has allowed me to foster and build new relationships that, like you, Sarah. But yeah, same with you, Steve. I couldn't agree more too. Not knowing the people, having to work with a brand new team or brand new manufacturer or client, it's difficult. It's very difficult, but I think it's just that constant communication, not taking things personally, you know, and just having that understanding. So,
You know, one of the things that I've seen that I think was actually really difficult in the pandemic, you know, there was a lot of stress happening with people, and you get in a big meeting and people would start snapping at each other. And you're like, that's not who that person is. And you know, if you know them, and so somebody new doesn't know that, and that's a difficult place to be as well. So yeah, that's where those real interpersonal interactions, you know, are kind of necessary. The other thing I was going to mention, because I saw that Kim commented again, you know, one of the things that I've started realizing, and even as I've got involved with just SEMA, I'm not close to most of the people that I want to talk to. Just send them a message, say, hey, I'd love to get to know you. Let's schedule a half hour and just get to know each other. And it's worked really well for me recently.
nice.
So
Great
do
suggestion.
that.
Well, thank you all for answering that polling question. I think, you know, there was actually another question asked, like, maybe can you both give us some best practices, maybe from your perspective as a male, Steve, and then also Sarah, from your perspective as, you know, getting to know a new female in the group. What are some best practices to show that you're an ally without overstepping maybe a boundary, or, you know, just making it very clear that, you know, hey, I just want to empower you. I want to support you. So Steve, why don't you go for it?
Sure. I think it just comes from the caring standpoint. You know, as soon as you can really show somebody, hey, I'm looking out for your interest, I'm looking out for our team's best interest, you know, we want you to be part of the team. Get to know me, get to know everybody else. So don't make it just about you and we're overstepping a boundary, that you're really trying to engage them as in part of the greater team. And you know, as soon as that becomes part of the conversation, you know, I think that helps ease any tensions.
Yeah.
What do you want to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, yes, I think just having conversations, some of the best conversations I had been with, like, for me, my two main allies, obviously, besides like my dad, was Pete Shaporis and Mike Spagnola. And a lot of times with them, it would always be like, they would just sit down and talk to me. Like, what are you doing? How's things going? Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I mean, just the fact that they just, both of them sat down at, you know, different times, they would check in, or like after a meeting, they'd come up, oh, what have you been up to? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they were just always asking me what was going on in my life. And it never felt like, you know, like any hidden agendas or anything like that ever. It was just purely like they wanted to know what was going on in my life, because I was somebody that worked with them and I was on teams with them. And, you know, same thing. They liked a lot of the things that I was doing, and my energy and things like that, they would tell me. So I didn't ever feel like there was anything weird. It was just, they were just genuinely asking me what I wanted and what I wanted to do. And I don't think that's any different conversation to a male versus a woman. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was other conversations that males have brought up, and you could tell their agenda was completely different. And I think that you as a person can really understand the difference. And I think as a male, you can really make, you know, trust me, those conversations aren't a fine line. They are completely different. And so I know that the people that are worried about, oh, they're going to take this the wrong way, you're probably not the person that's going to have the wrong conversation. You're probably the person that's actually genuine and asking questions and talking and caring about that person. So just to be clear, I mean, when I've had conversations with some guys, they've literally fully come out and just say it. It's not like it was just implied. They just full out say it. So I kind of want to let you know that there's not like this like super thin line right there.
Yeah, I think you're nailing it, Sarah. Is, you know, we just, if you're professional about it, per what you were saying, Steve, if you're coming at it from, hey, it's for the company, it's for the team, that's a professional approach to it. And if you're concerned, if you're concerned about it overstepping, I think the fine line, I don't know, as you said, Sarah, I don't know if it's that fine.
Right.
But I do want to, oh, sorry.
No, and like if there was ever a time that I think I did feel uncomfortable, I knew right away to walk away, or, you know, and I think girls need to know that. And I think that's the same for men, but it's like, you can feel it going somewhere. And if it does, then you can say like, oh, I'm cool. Thank you. I'm going over here. And that's completely fine. You know, not, and that's just with any allyship, not male and female. I mean, there's times when I've had conversations with other women and we just don't jive on the same thing. And that's not someone that I want as an ally, and that's okay as well too.
Yeah. Jeff Sterling actually made a comment where it says lack of trust from a lack of relationship, as well as a lack of overall understanding of the issues we're facing. And I couldn't agree more, you know, just not having that, just that communication. But that also doesn't mean don't start the conversation. Having at least, like you were saying, Sarah, just asking how, you know, what you're interested in, what are your goals, basic things like that. It allows you to at least get to know these people, where then you can start having more of a relationship, professional relationship, that it allows you to form those allied bonds, if you will. And it goes for women too. We as women need to approach other women, younger women, say, what are your goals? What are your interests? What do you want to do? So we can help empower that next generation as well. So let's see, there is another. As a male ally, is it better to address a negative behavior action in the moment or later and not in a group setting? So, Steve, why don't you,
Boy,
I see you going for it.
that's going to be a tough one, because, you know, it's going to depend on the situation. You know, I know I've pulled somebody aside at different points, and maybe not just this, and said, hey, you know, that wasn't cool. Don't do that. What are you doing? And it's not easy, and it could be way worse. And luckily, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of way worse in my time. I think there have been some that have happened, but, you know, in a professional setting, wow. I mean, if you're doing something really bad in a professional setting, pull in the experts, and you know, go right to the HR department. But otherwise, you know, if it's something that is just a little off, you know, I have no problem addressing that with one of my male counterparts and saying, hey, back off, be cool, don't do that. What are you trying to do here? What are you trying to accomplish with this? So, and it's, you know, I guess that's just me and how I would handle it. I don't know that everybody would handle it the same. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, you're trying to figure out a context for what is happening. And, you know, from somebody who's not taking that standpoint, to see it happen is a bit of a shock to your system. So, you know, that's a strange place to be.
Yeah.
Anything else? You want to add anything to that, Sarah? We have so many questions coming in. I love it.
Yeah, it is definitely, like you said, you're going to have to read the situation that you're in, because each time it's different. As a woman-owned company, I had a lot of males that worked for me. And sometimes I would have to make sure that those conversations were ones that I had to pull aside and have the conversation about what was appropriate and not appropriate. But I also didn't have a problem. Like if someone said something to me right away, I would say, that's not appropriate. Let's move on, you know? But it's different. Every situation is different. I mean, me in my own workplace, and I'm the boss, I can say certain things at certain times, because I had to make sure that they knew where I stood and where there was a line. So that was different in my workplace because I was the owner. If it's like me out with like other people in the industry, I would probably have a side conversation if there was something that happened and tell that person it didn't make me feel comfortable. I wouldn't say it in front of any like peers or anything like that.
Awesome. So another question came through. Do you believe that each gender has different styles? Would that be the reason why maybe a male is more comfortable working with another male, and really is maybe more uncomfortable in adjusting to a female style? Who wants to go first?
I 100% think there's definitely way different styles, perspectives, all of the above. So I think a lot of times, like when, I mean, even us just working on like builds, like, you know, the guys would be very like, this is very functional and this is what we're doing. And my sister and I would be more like, we would have a way completely different approach. So I think that having a team that had both of them, both male and female on it, especially like, you know, my dad was older and we were younger and we kind of had like this great mix. I think it worked out really well for us, but don't get me wrong, we did butt heads a lot because we would have different approaches. But I think that's in every relationship, right? I mean, we have to learn how to work with each type of personality, because even when I was working with my team, you know, we have 28 employees, and I learned that I had to approach each one of my employees differently. I couldn't approach them all the same, even though they were all male, you know, or they weren't all male, but, you know, 22 of them were. So even that, I think, is just, there's different personalities, not just men and women 100%, but across the board. So just learning how to work with different personalities is is a big challenge as well.
I think you're dead on with that. Just the personalities. I mean, take male and female out of it. Every different personality has something else that you have to, you know, work around, adjust with them, figure out how to work with that person. And so much of the time, you know, Sarah nailed it on this whole thing. I shouldn't have even talked, but you know, you just have so many people coming in with different ideas. As long as you can help pull it all together, if you're one of the voices, you can be the ally to the entire team by pulling it all together. Make sure everybody's heard. Make sure that somebody isn't having their idea diminished or whatever, you know, that it's the group that is really working well together. And that's actually probably the harder thing, is just getting everybody to work together, different personalities, not just male and female style. There is some of that for sure, no denying, but you know, it's bigger than that, I think.
Yeah. You know, my dad gave me a very wise bit of information. I think he's paraphrasing somebody else, but you know, the smartest person in the room put smarter people around him. And it's one of those things where, we don't know each other's experiences. We don't know each other's backgrounds and histories, which all plays into our personalities and the way we talk and act and interact. So yeah, allyship is dependent on business culture. And cultures are evolving and will continue to evolve. So having these conversations, building the trust, building the relationships, so you do understand what their goals are, what their capabilities are, I think is so empowering to not just the person or the leader, but the entire team and the entire company. You know, I think back to, I think it was session 2 last year, session 2 last year, when they were talking about Oracle, and, you know, the gentleman there didn't even realize that there was some biases in other companies, you know, that some of the stories that he heard during the all-female bill he did, you know, he had no idea. So it's dependent on the culture of the business. So yeah, that is gonna lead us actually right into the next slide. So can we go to the next slide, Gary? Awesome. So yes, patience and persistence. And I see that there's a couple of questions that have been asked in the Q&A, so we will get to those, I promise. But why don't you start with this, Steve, and how important the patience and persistence side is?
Yeah, and I think what you're trying to deal with is a long-term culture that has been around for, you know, longer than we've been around. So making inroads, making changes, it's not always easy. And I actually saw some of the other questions were popping up about age. And you know, I always try to think age is a number, and as I'm getting older, I'm starting to say, well, maybe there's something to it. But But in all honesty, though, I mean, you probably get more prejudices and you get more stuck in your ways as you get older. You have to just check yourself and you have to realize where you're at, who's around you, and realize that, maybe that female on the other side, maybe this younger person or whoever it is, they might have great ideas that you should be listening to, and just stand back and say, I'm going to listen, I'm going to consider. I had one of my bosses years ago. I would always get so frustrated with him that, he wouldn't, I didn't think he ever listened. I'd bring him an idea. And what I came to realize was I was bringing him my idea instead of what he asked for. And so after a while, I was like, okay, I have to give him what he asks for first. And then he'll consider my idea as long as he's seen what he wanted. And maybe that's part of it as well, just understanding how to deal with that other person. So the person that you think of as having prejudice, they might not have prejudice. They just have an agenda. They have to get things done. So take a look from your standpoint and the other person's standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts you want to add to that, Sarah?
I think that he hit it spot on. For me, I had to learn on the patient's part, because I used to also get very frustrated, like, why aren't they seeing it my way? And because, like Steve said, my way wasn't what they were looking for. It wasn't their agenda. Or I had to also learn to not take things personally on a lot of the parts, because I didn't know what those people were going through. And a lot of times, we get frustrated, and our frustration sometimes isn't with the other person, it's with ourselves, and we're not really looking at what we're doing that could be, like Steve said, he's saying things over and over again to the person, but if he would have just done what they had asked for, and then he could have, that brought his thing. There's always different ways to approach stuff. And just remembering that if you start to get impatient or start to get frustrated, to take a step back and kind of just look at it as a bigger picture and try to say, like, how can I either change this or reword it, or how can I make something different? Because I think sometimes we get so focused and so hard looking on something that we forget to look at the bigger picture and how it's affecting things spread across, everything. So even though Steve wanted something, maybe the other person's agenda was for something that was better as a whole and not for just a situation. And sometimes I think we forget about that there's other things that people are working on.
Yeah, there's no one answer. That's one thing that I think we can all agree upon, is that there's no one answer of this is what happens, this is how you act. It all is dependent on the person and the experience and everything. But yeah, the introspection is critical to us growing the ally mindset, because without being introspective, how can we understand maybe we're not being the best ally for somebody else? It's a two-way street. So really keeping that available in your arsenal of, all right, I should look inside, I should, observe other people, what worked for them, always having that curiosity. Yeah, so I think, thank you both for your opinions on that. I think that's spot on and awesome. So yeah, getting to the other questions, so let's see, sorry. How do you increase allyship with age gaps, with managers of companies, with mindsets of this is how it's always been, so this is how we're going to keep doing it? 30 years of experience in the company is beneficial, but sometimes it's a challenge to change mindsets. So what are your thoughts on that, Sarah?
So actually I've been kind of challenging this. There's a couple of girls, especially from the SBN build. We had a lot of younger girls that came in, and they're telling me like their paths, and there was probably 3 girls that really stood out to me, and I was trying to be there for all of the younger girls that were there, and trying to be like, how can we help, and here's the path that you need, and this is what you need to do, because this is the advice that I got when I was their age. And when I started to listen to a lot of the girls, I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of different programs now, or things out there that weren't out there when I was 16 and 18, 19 years old. And then so I started listening to more of them and what their path was, and kind of try to just, where had they come from? How did they get where they were at? Where, do they have a goal set of what they want to do? And do they feel like it, or are they stuck anywhere? So instead of me trying to like lay the roadmap out for them, that was my roadmap. Like, here's success, I'm giving it to you, but that was my roadmap, that's not theirs. So I think having to like listen to them a little bit more, and then it helped me help other younger girls, because I would hear that, these girls were doing X, Y, and Z, and I didn't even know that those programs existed. So when another girl came up to me, asked me about something, I was like, oh, you should talk to so and so. And then I was able to link them together so that they could help each other out. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that we have to remember as being older, is that there's so many more resources that the younger kids have now that we didn't have. So we had to rely on doing things a little bit differently. And it's kind of great to hear what they're saying, because those resources are also resources that help me as well, being older, because they're things that I can also use.
Why don't we go to the next slide? I know we only have about like 8 minutes left, but there was one other question that I'll ask you panelists as well. What do you feel is the reason more of the older generation of executives in our industry won't help make the change in this mindset? And maybe as a follow-up question, how do we help them understand or maybe make that mindset shift? Steve, why don't we start with you?
So there's a couple things I can think of, and it's not easy, because when I'm looking at a lot of the new things, new ideas, programs, the new things that we have available now that didn't have 25, 30 years ago. Maybe there's a bit of resentment toward that almost, even, and I don't like that thought of it. But if you can, as the ally, present something in their behalf of that, actually show people that, hey, I'm considering this, maybe you should too. There's a little bit of peer pressure that you can put on in a good way when you think in that set of terms.
What are your thoughts, Sarah?
Yeah, I guess like for me, the older generation, they have been the ones that have always reached out to me and helped me. Older, I guess for me, a lot of them are pretty much set in their ways on certain points or positions. I think more of our generation now, or I shouldn't even say just our generation, because I'm like considering everyone from like 70 and younger, but I think we're a little more open-minded now where we're at in our lives, because I hear all the time, I have a daughter, I have a sister, I have a niece, and there's so many men out there that are like, man, I really wish there was something I can do to help encourage them, and they really want to see them grow. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of the stuff, a lot of this whole program has changed, because women are in the workforce now, and so men are saying that they want to help these women grow. So it's a little bit different, I think, environment than we were. So like, you know, Steve said in the very beginning, I think we are moving forward in this. It's slowly growing, but if you look back at how long ago women couldn't even vote, I feel like it's a pretty big leap on where we're moving in so many ways. So it's, I don't know, it's good to see. And there's a lot of men that are, you know, on this call right now too, that have supported women very strongly in the industry, and a lot of them have supported me. So I mean, I know Joel has always been huge on going out there and making sure he's connecting with all of us and out there supporting us. So I don't know. I think it's just like everything, the more we keep talking about it, and like it says, growing the conversation, it's actually having the conversation. So, and not just in this call, but outside of this call, you know, keep having that conversation and keep just, you know, keep going.
And I will agree with you too, Sarah. I have had a number of, I guess, older generation, you know, people throughout my career when I was just starting, even now, where they see something that I didn't see in myself, and they've encouraged me to go after things. So I think it really is important that we don't stereotype. I think that's the whole conversation here, is like, don't stereotype women, don't stereotype men, don't stereotype old, young. We all have experiences and we all have value. So let's find it.
Yeah.
Let's really be each other's allies to find the value in all of us. So that way, in our professional environment, whether it's our own company or we're an employee for a company, we can all grow and succeed together. And social norms just take time to change. You know, it just takes time. But as you said, Sarah, we have grown leaps and bounds, and we're going to need to continue that. But having these conversations and then taking what we're saying here and then applying that to our spheres of influence will help continue that growth. So, you know, that's kind of what this slide is actually all about, is continuing to raise the awareness, observe, you know, internally, externally, engage, but be curious. Don't be defensive, be curious. Maybe ask somebody, hey, did that make you feel a certain way? Or, you know, understand your audience, understand who it is that you're working with. And then be patient with yourself, with others, but be persistent. Sarah, Steve, actually, let's start with you, Sarah. What are your final thoughts that you want to give to the group here?
I guess my final thoughts to the group is that just keep supporting everybody, male or female, young, old. And for a lot of the women, don't walk into a room thinking you're a woman walking into the room. Walk into the room being a peer and being, you know, on the same page as everyone else. So I think just removing, like you said, those titles that we put on ourselves that are just, they're just titled, they're not even a thing. It's just go in with confidence. It's hard to, but it's not just you going through it. Every single person goes through it, no matter how successful or unsuccessful someone is. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I want people to understand, is that we all have nerves. We all go through ups and downs, and we all, you know, have to work on making sure that our mindset's right so that we can keep succeeding. So,
Steve?
Yeah, I love what you just said, Sarah. That was great. So I think more, maybe just adding on to that, you know, I keep thinking about different experiences, and you never know what somebody else is going through. You never know what's happening in somebody's life. You know, make it easier on them. We're all part of a really cool organization. SEMA is really amazing. We're all in an industry that we have at least some common goals with. Everybody should be an ally to you, whether you're doing something with them, business, interacting, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. We're all part of this other group now that we can all say, hey, we've got a common goal. So, think about that when you're dealing with everybody else, in your company, in the companies you deal with, all the people you deal with, that we're all trying to do something, for a common goal. So.
Awesome. Why don't we go to the final slide? So just FYI, I know there was a few questions in here that were asked in the Q&A, but we unfortunately didn't get a chance to get to all of them. But the session on May 21st will be actual real life stories from the panelists about their successes and their struggles. And so maybe there's some really good interactive questions that you guys can ask during that session. So please note these dates on your calendar, May 21st and August 20th. Those are the next two webinars that will continue this conversation. Really can't tell you all how much I appreciate the attendees for watching and asking your questions. Sara, Steve, you guys are amazing. I love working with both of you. You guys have so much insight. Really can't tell you how much the entire audience appreciates the time that you're giving to this. So thank you both very much. And if you haven't become, if you're not a member of SBN, it's free. It's a network. Please go and sign up on the SEMA page. Nicole, actually, can you put the link in the chat real fast?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Cool, thanks. But yeah, and one last final thought for me, we're coming up on 104 years in August since women were constitutionally granted the right to vote. It's only been 104 years. And look at where we've come today. So we still have, more to talk about. We still have more conversations to have and continuing to grow this ally mindset. But we have an amazing rate of improvement. And if we keep this going together, we can keep this growing. So again, thank you all for joining us. May 21st will be the next session. So please go and register now and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much.